Claressa Shields has done it again. And I mean that in the most exhausting way a person can mean those 4 words. Because what we are watching in real time right now is not a champion having a moment. It is not a boxer flexing on a rival. It is not a crossover artist trying something new for the culture. What we are watching is a documented, undisputed, 2-time Olympic gold medalist take the last remaining threads of mainstream goodwill she had left and light them on fire on her own verified page for a 10-second rap snippet that sounds like it was recorded in the parking lot of the studio she could not afford to book. The song is called Run Your Mouth. The target is Alycia Baumgardner, undisputed super featherweight champion. A woman who fights 30 pounds beneath Claressa on the scale and who has spent the last month doing nothing louder than posting workout clips and answering reporter questions with visible boredom. The cover art is an AI-generated Barbie doll that does not even look like Claressa. The rollout is her arguing with her own fans in her own comment section, calling them ugly by name on a verified account in 2026, while she is supposedly in training camp. And the framing being pushed by her camp and by the 2 or 3 blogs still willing to carry water for her is that this is bold, this is alpha, this is unbothered champion energy. And I need you to understand, before we go one paragraph further, that every single word of that framing is a lie. And the lie is not accidental. The lie is load-bearing, because if the lie collapses, the actual story underneath it collapses with it. And the actual story underneath it is the story of a career that is not selling tickets, not landing brand deals, not moving pay-per-view units, and not being called by the promotional companies that are quietly running women's boxing right now. Everything you have been told about Run Your Mouth has been framed around the wrong question. The question is not whether the song is any good. The question is why a 31-year-old undisputed multi-division champion in the middle of a training camp is spending her cognitive energy on a diss track aimed at a woman she cannot legally box. And when we get to the industry and contract breakdown later in this video, and I promise you we are getting there, we're going all the way there. We are going into the MVP promotional math, the reported soft ticket numbers, the brand deal drought, and the defamation exposure that is being built one Instagram post at a time. You are going to see why Run Your Mouth is not a diss track at all. Run Your Mouth is a distress signal, and the person sending it does not know she is sending it. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Alright, let us set the whole board so nobody in this comment section can claim I skipped a step, because Claressa's remaining stands love to argue in bad faith, and I am not giving them the opening. Claressa Shields, from Flint, Michigan, undisputed in multiple weight classes, 2-time Olympic gold medalist. One of the most decorated amateur boxers this country has produced in the modern era. Nobody, and I mean nobody with an actual pen in this space, is taking that resume away from her. The resume is not the argument. The resume has never been the argument. The argument is what she has done with the resume in the last 12 to 18 months, because the last 12 to 18 months have been a case study in how to take generational goodwill, generational amateur pedigree, and a legitimate claim to being the face of a sport, and torch all 3 of them in public for content that would not clear a SoundCloud quality control check. On the other side of this, you have Alycia Baumgardner, undisputed super featherweight, signed to MVP, which for the fans who do not follow the business side, is the promotional company built out of the Jake Paul and Nakisa Bidarian ecosystem that has quietly become the most aggressive women's boxing developer in the sport. Baumgardner walks around at 130. Claressa is cutting to 160 for a matchup with an Australian opponent that even hardcore women's boxing fans have to Google. That is a 30-pound gap. 30 pounds. In this sport, 30 pounds is not a rivalry. 30 pounds is not a grudge match. 30 pounds is a bully looking for a mismatch. And the fact that the bully is dressing the mismatch up in a rap snippet and an AI Barbie cover does not change the geography of what is happening. Now stack the stakes on top of the geography. The stakes here are not just who wins a rap snippet exchange on Instagram. The stakes are what Claressa is telling every major brand partner about the kind of investment she is. She is telling Nike, she is telling Powerade, she is telling Target, she is telling Sprite. She is telling every crossover mainstream brand that might have picked up the phone about a women's boxing endorsement in 2026 exactly who she is when the cameras are on and when the receipts are being screenshotted. She is telling Baumgardner's legal team in writing on a public post exactly what her posture is toward a woman who has reportedly already used the phrase, "there will be consequences," after a physical altercation between the 2 of them. She is telling the fans who have been holding the line for her that their loyalty is being spent on a rap career nobody in the culture asked for. And she is doing every single piece of this while she is supposedly locked in on a fight camp for a real opponent. So the question I want you carrying with you from this paragraph to the outro, the question that sits under this entire video, is a simple one. If the fight is so easy, if the opponent is so beneath her, if the resume is so untouchable, then why does every single thing Claressa is doing right now smell like panic? Let us start with what you can actually see, because I am not asking anybody to take my word on any part of this. The receipts are all public. Claressa posted the single cover for Run Your Mouth to her own social media pages with the caption, "You wanted a response. Press play. Run Your Mouth. Claressa Shields." Her page, her words, her rollout. Now the cover art itself is genuinely one of the funniest pieces of visual marketing a professional athlete has put out in 2026, and I want you to sit with the description of it, because the description is the point. The centerpiece is Claressa rendered as a pin-up-style Barbie doll. Except the Barbie doll does not look like Claressa. The doll's complexion is noticeably lighter than Claressa's actual complexion, which is a marketing choice that is impossible to defend when you are the subject of your own cover. You do not whiten yourself on your own art unless something is going on internally about how you want to be perceived. And that is a whole separate conversation for a whole separate video. Then in the bottom corner of the cover, you have what is supposed to be Alycia Baumgardner, drawn as a smaller figure, tears in her eyes, positioned at the doll's feet in a groveling pose, and rendered a shade darker than Baumgardner actually is in real life. And then, for reasons no professional graphic designer alive can explain, there is a floating hand on the side of the cover with the middle finger up, punching through what starts as a boxing glove and morphs halfway through into an MMA glove, because the AI could not commit to which sport it was rendering. This is not fan art. This is not a bootleg cover made by a stan. This is the official art the self-proclaimed face of women's boxing pushed to her own verified account. It is cheap AI. It is free generator AI. It is type in Barbie Boxer and hit generate once I. And this is what she chose to represent her rap debut with. Now, the snippet. 10 seconds of audio. 10 seconds is what she chose to feed the internet as the appetizer. And even at 10 seconds, the delivery has problems the average listener can hear on the first spin. She sounds rushed. She sounds like she is chasing the beat rather than sitting on top of it. The way she pronounces internet alone tells you nobody in that studio had the authority to say run that back. The bars themselves, 304 cells. She be on the internet saying she can whoop me. Now she pressing charges. The cops want to book me. Whole way above 30 trying to be a bully. Those are Dr. Seuss cadences dressed up in a Detroit-style beat. And the beat itself is trying so hard to sit in the same room as a T Grizzly record that it ends up sounding like a T Grizzly type beat somebody pulled off YouTube without paying for the exclusive tag. The beat is not the problem. The beat is fine. The problem is user error. Then there are her replies. She did not just drop the song and let the internet respond. She got in the comments. Somebody wrote, "Drop that weight like she asked," a mild low-stakes comment. And Claressa replied by calling the person a loser and insisting Baumgardner needs to gain, because I'm number one stupid. Somebody else wrote, "The Barbie looks better than the actual person," and Claressa, verified on her own page, responded by calling that fan ugly by name. Somebody else called the whole rollout wacky AF. And Claressa replied and called that person ugly too. This is a professional athlete on her own verified page, calling paying fans ugly on the same post where she is trying to sell them a song. That is not confidence. That is not champion energy. That is somebody who cannot get off the app. And oh, do I have more for you. Because if you thought the AI Barbie cover and the ugly name calling comment war was the story, you are still standing in the driveway of this story. The stans are really not going to like this next part, because the next layer is where Run Your Mouth stops being a bad snippet and starts being an admission, a documented on-wax admission, of a pattern Claressa's supporters have been pretending does not exist for years. Sit up in the chair for this stretch, because we are about to go from music criticism into cultural accounting. And by the time we come out the other side, you're going to understand that the biggest problem with Run Your Mouth is not the song, and it is not the cover. And it is not even the comment section. The biggest problem is what Run Your Mouth is quietly confessing about every diss Claressa has already refused to answer. Here is the cultural layer. And this is where the wheels start coming off in a way the resume cannot save her from. If you're going to position yourself as a rapper, if you're going to record and release music under your own name, if you're going to build a public identity around a partner who has publicly claimed at various points to have contributed to another rapper's catalog, then the rules of engagement change. You do not get to pick which disses count and which ones you get to ignore. You do not get to answer the boxer because the boxer cannot rap and skip the rappers because the rappers can. That is not how the culture works. And Claressa Shields has been dissed on wax by actual rappers multiple times and has said absolutely nothing in reply. Start with Remy Ma. Remy Ma, on the Put Them on Record, has bars any reasonable listener in the culture reads as pointed directly at Claressa and her partner. The passage, Ever Since You Left, Me Remix, French Montana. This New York City, French, Max B, Remy always the one, never the two. I told him find something stupid to play with. He pick you. That entire run, given the public timeline of what has been happening between those two camps, is understood by anybody paying attention to be aimed at that household. And Remy did not stop there. She went back into the studio, on camera, on the Radar green screen freestyle series, and got even sharper. You want to be a baddie, but you're not bad enough. You ugly. You can't make this up with makeup. The numbers ain't adding up. You're not a baddie. That is not subliminal. That is not vague. That is a first ballot lyricist, one of the most technically respected female MCs of her entire generation, drawing a target on you on wax, twice, minimum, and possibly 3 times if you count the follow-up reference tracks. And Claressa's response to Remy Ma has been what, exactly? A subliminal tweet on a Tuesday? A vague Instagram live where the name never got said out loud? Silence on record? Nothing that could be described as a real reply. Then you have Nigeria, who according to public reporting was Claressa's close friend. Someone inside the circle. Someone who had access. Nigeria walked to the Claressa Shields street sign in Flint, in Claressa's own city, on Claressa's own block, and dissed her on camera, with the sign in the shot. Your ex-best friend used your own street as her backdrop to come at you, and you did not answer that either. Not on wax. Not with a snippet. Nothing. The argument the softer stands want to make is that Nigeria's diss was personal, not professional, and so it does not count. That argument does not survive one round of scrutiny. If Nigeria felt compelled to walk to the street sign the city put up for you and record a diss, with it framing her shot, that relationship was already a public matter, and the response to a public diss is a public response. That is the game. You do not get to skip the game. Now stack the ledger. Remy Ma, actual rapper, dissed you on wax, multiple times, silence. Nigeria, actual rapper, former friend, dissed you on your own block, silence. And then Alycia Baumgardner, who is a professional boxer, who does not rap, who does not sing, who is not a recording artist in any lane, said at a media scrum that she would knock you out because reporters kept pressing her about you. And that is the target you decide to answer with a full studio session, a cover art rollout, a snippet drop, and a multi-day comment section war? That is the person you decide is worth your musical debut? That tells you everything about the internal ranking system inside Claressa's head. She does not answer the rappers because she knows she cannot compete with them lyrically. She answers the boxer because the boxer does not rap. That is the entire logic of a bully. You pick the smallest opponent in the smallest arena and you swing. And there is another cultural piece running underneath all of this that nobody in the mainstream boxing press wants to touch, which is the sheer volume of friend group carnage in Claressa's orbit. Go down the list. Shad Deja Green, beef. Layla Ali, who by every credible account was an early mentor figure, who Claressa was publicly warm to for years, is now on camera saying she is not breaking bread. She is not coming out of retirement for that fight. She does not trust the people around Claressa. And it is a no-can-do. Franchen Cruz-Dezern, once cool, now getting badmouthed on every microphone Claressa can find. Even her own family members have been pulled into public disputes at various points. That is not a personality clash. That is not everybody is a hater. When every single person in your orbit, mentors, peers, ex-friends, family, ends up on the outs with you, the common denominator is not them. Does everybody understand how loud that math is when you actually stop and read it back? Now I need you to shift gears with me, because up to this point we have been in entertainment mode. We have been talking about music quality, cover art, comment section behavior, and cultural etiquette. From this paragraph forward, I need you thinking about Run Your Mouth as a business story, because that is what it actually is. And once you see it as a business story, none of Claressa's behavior looks random or emotional anymore. It looks like exactly what it is. A series of manufactured spikes fired into the sky by a career that is watching its own leverage evaporate in real time and does not know how else to signal for help. This is the pattern interrupt. This is where the video shifts from who won the diss to why the entire promotional infrastructure around this fighter is quietly rerouting around her. Sit up for this section. This is the section that separates the people who watch boxing from the people who understand boxing. Layer 3. The industry layer. The layer the average boxing fan does not think about, because the average boxing fan is not sitting in the rooms where these decisions actually get made. Start with the promotional math, because promotional math is the language the sport actually speaks. Alycia Baumgardner is signed to MVP. MVP's model, if you have been watching them book their roster, is high-frequency activity. Get your fighters on cards, get them on Netflix, get them on Fox, get them onto every eyeball-driving platform the modern combat sports business will pay for, and keep the roster working. Amanda Serrano just fought and reportedly already has another matchup lined up in a major crossover event. Baumgardner reportedly has a Fox television slot in the pipeline. Other MVP fighters are being slotted into cards on a rolling schedule that treats activity as the actual currency of 2026 boxing. Because in 2026 boxing, activity is the actual currency. Attention decays fast. Streaming platforms do not wait. The audience that watched you last year does not automatically watch you this year unless you have been in front of them consistently. That is the MVP thesis, and the thesis is working. Claressa's camp does not operate that way. Claressa's camp has historically leaned on Claressa's individual star power to carry the marquee, which was a viable strategy in an earlier era of women's boxing when there was really only one bankable name at the top of the sport. That is not the era we are in anymore. There are 10, 12, 15 legitimate names now, with legitimate followings, with legitimate promotional infrastructure around them. And the market has diversified in a way the older model cannot keep pace with. So when Claressa gets on a rant and tells MVP to build their fighters without mentioning her name, what she is actually saying, whether she understands the words coming out of her own mouth or not, is that MVP has become a competitor at the promotional level, not just at the fighter level. And she is losing that competition. That is why the mentions keep happening. That is why Baumgardner keeps showing up in interviews that started about somebody else entirely. That is the first systemic angle. Now stack the ticket problem on top of it. There have been persistent reports, and I want to be careful and label them as reports, that ticket sales for Claressa's upcoming fight with the Australian opponent have been soft. Not catastrophic. Soft. Which, when you are the self-proclaimed face of women's boxing headlining a card in what should be your prime earning years, soft is a red flag the size of a stadium. Soft is the number that tells the network, the site fee partners, the co-promoters, and the sponsor pipeline exactly where your actual drawing power sits when it is not being propped up by a rivalry the internet cares about. And soft ticket numbers force a decision. You can either lean into the actual craft, sell the storyline of the fight in front of you, hype your opponent, rebuild the demand organically through the work, or you can throw gasoline on the internet and hope somebody clicks something. Guess which one Claressa picked? She picked the gasoline. Every single one of these moves, the rap diss, the AI Barbie, the comment section wars, the callouts of retired fighters like Layla Ali, the callouts of rappers like 50 Cent, the callouts of MMA legends like Chris Cyborg, every single one of those is a manufactured spike. It is not a strategy. It is a series of flares fired into a dark sky because the real signal is not being received by the market she needs to reach. That is the second systemic angle. Now stack the brand problem on top of both. When was the last time a major national brand, a real Nike, a real Powerade, a real Target, a real Sprite, a real Chipotle, a real 2026 mainstream buyer with actual national reach, announced a headline crossover endorsement with Claressa Shields? Not a niche boxing partner. Not a regional sponsor. A real crossover brand. It has been quiet, and it has been quiet for a reason. And the reason is not racism. And it is not misogyny. And it is not the industry sleeping on women's boxing, because the industry is very much awake, and it is signing the fighters around her at a steady clip. The reason is that every argument in her comment section, every paying fan she calls ugly by name, every public accusation she makes about another woman in her sport, every allegedly defamatory line in a diss track, is another checkbox on a brand safety report that lands on some VP of partnership's desk and gets the folder closed before the meeting is even scheduled. She is not being frozen out. She is being self-selected out, one Instagram post at a time. That is the third systemic angle. And here is where the systemic angles start to converge, because the fourth and most dangerous layer of all of this is the defamation exposure. Baumgardner reportedly said, after the physical altercation between them, that there will be consequences. Anybody who has spent 5 minutes near this kind of situation knows what there will be consequences is code for. It is code for lawyers. It is code for filings. It is code for a paper trail being built out. And what has Claressa done in the days since that phrase entered the public record? She has, per screenshots that have circulated widely, made statements on her verified page referring to Baumgardner in language that would be extremely difficult to defend in a courtroom without documentation. She has, again per public posts, made allegations about Baumgardner's behavior that a plaintiff's attorney would circle in red marker and reproduce on the front page of a complaint. And here is the part that is either dark comedy or genuine tragedy, depending on your mood. This is a woman who has publicly said she is prepared to sue people for defamation. She has threatened defamation actions against bloggers, against streamers, against other public figures who have made claims about her. She understands the concept. She just does not seem to understand that the concept applies in both directions. You cannot be the person threatening a defamation lawsuit on Monday and posting textbook defamatory statements on Tuesday. That is not strategy. That is building your opponent's case for them in public, with a smile, on your own verified account. And here is the truth bomb. Here is the thing every paragraph of this video has been walking you toward. And I want you to actually hear this one, not skim it, because everything up to this point, the trash rap, the AI Barbie, the ignored Remy Ma Receipts, the burned mentorships, the soft ticket numbers, the missing brand deals, the defamation exposure, every single one of those threads ties back to a single reality Claressa Shields cannot say out loud, and that her camp cannot admit even in private. She is not being cornered by her enemies. She is being cornered by her own choices. And the choices are being made because the leverage she used to have is quietly, systematically, undeniably gone. Read that sentence again. The leverage is gone. For a long stretch of her career, Claressa was the leverage. She was the reason the network showed up to the meeting. She was the reason the site fee got approved by the finance department. She was the reason the co-promoter took the phone call. That is not the market anymore. And that has not been the market for a while. And the people in the rooms have already repriced her accordingly. And the only person who has not yet accepted the new pricing is the person being repriced. When the leverage disappears, an athlete has two options. Option 1 is discipline. You go quiet. You get in the gym. You take a smart, competitive fight. You look phenomenal on the night. You let the work rebuild the leverage the way the work built it in the first place. That is what a champion with a long horizon does. Option 2 is noise. You try to manufacture the leverage through controversy, because controversy is the last free resource on the internet, and controversy does not require a co-promoter to sign off on anything. Option 2 is the one Claressa picked. And the reason she picked it, the reason Run Your Mouth exists at all, the reason the AI Barbie cover exists at all, the reason she is arguing with strangers on her own verified page at midnight instead of sleeping before a training session, is because she knows, on some level she is not saying out loud even to herself, that a quiet news cycle for her right now is a dangerous news cycle for her career. Silence is the enemy. Any noise, even embarrassing noise, even self-damaging noise, even legally exposing noise, feels safer to her than silence. That is the reveal. That is what Run Your Mouth is really about. Run Your Mouth is not a diss to Alycia Baumgardner. Run Your Mouth is a distress signal from an athlete who is scared of what happens when the room goes quiet and who is willing to burn every professional relationship, every brand relationship, every mentor relationship, and every last drop of cultural goodwill to keep the room loud enough that she cannot hear the quiet coming. That is not a champion. That is a person allegedly trying to outrun their own irrelevance and doing it at 160 pounds against a woman who fights at 130. And the tragedy of it, the genuine tragedy, is that the resume is still good enough to build a real second act on. The Olympic pedigree, the amateur run, the undisputed titles, those are real, those are permanent, those cannot be taken. If she operated with even 60% of the discipline of the fighters actually landing the mainstream deals right now, she would be one of the most bankable women in the entire sport tomorrow. But brands do not buy resumes. Brands buy predictability. And predictability is the one thing she refuses to sell them. Now let us zoom back out, because the story is not all bleak, and the culture is not lost, and this is where the emotional landing pad comes in. Because while every single piece of this has been unfolding on Claressa's side of the scoreboard, Alycia Baumgardner has been doing what disciplined professionals do when the loudest fighter in the room is spending her energy on a rap career nobody asked for. Baumgardner has been posting her body of work. She has been showing up to media scrums, answering the questions she is asked, being visibly annoyed when the questions are silly, and moving on. She has been posting training photos where the physique speaks for itself, where the tricep is defined, where the complexion is glowing, where the outfit is right, where the caption is short, and the comments underneath those photos are full of real people saying she looks good, without her having to prompt them to say it. That is a very underrated distinction, and I want to make sure we do not skip it. One woman posts a photo, and the audience tells her she looks good. The other woman posts the photo, reposts it, posts it again, captions it with her own compliments about her own body, and then argues with anybody in the comments who does not chime in with the exact validation she was fishing for. Those are two completely different psychological profiles operating in two completely different professional postures. One is a fighter who trusts the work. The other is a person who needs the crowd to say it back, or the whole day falls apart. And that difference, that quiet, unglamorous discipline versus desperation difference, is the entire story of who is still going to be standing at the top of this sport 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when Run Your Mouth is a forgotten piece of trivia and the streaming numbers are a footnote nobody looks up. One person is fighting a war of noise. The other person is winning a war of quiet. In this sport, in this culture, on this platform, the war of quiet always wins the long game. Always. Write that one down and put it somewhere you can see it. This is the part one want the young fighters watching to actually internalize, because there is a generation coming up right now watching all of this play out and drawing conclusions about what a career is supposed to look like. You do not have to be the loudest voice in the room. You do not have to record a diss track every time a reporter asks you a question you did not want to answer. You do not have to fight in the comment section of your own post. You do not have to burn every mentor, every peer, every friend, every family member, and every promotional partner just to prove you are unbothered. Being genuinely unbothered looks like Baumgardner right now. It looks like a fighter who trains, posts the workout, answers the question, and goes home. The person actually winning this exchange is the person who has said the least. The person who has said the least. Claressa has said everything, on every platform, in every register, on wax, in comments, in interviews, in rants, in lives, in spaces, in tweets, in reposts, in reshares, in stories. And whereas all of it gotten her? Softer ticket sales, quieter brand phones, more legal exposure, fewer allies, and a rap snippet that is going to age like a gallon of milk in the trunk of a car in August. Meanwhile, Baumgardner posts one picture with a 2-word caption, and the internet writes her marketing plan for her. That is the contrast the entire culture is watching in real time, whether they can articulate it or not. So where does it go from here? Because that is really the question you should be leaving this video with. And I want to give you 2 very concrete things to track so you are not caught off guard when the next wave of this hits. Track 1 is the full Run Your Mouth song. Right now what we have is a snippet, and a snippet is deniable. A snippet is, you did not hear the whole thing yet, the rest of the song answers everything. Wait for the full version. When the full track drops, and it will drop, because a rollout this loud does not walk itself back. We get to hear the verses in full. We get to see the streaming numbers in the first 48 hours. We get to see whether TikTok picks it up, or whether the algorithm quietly buries it. And we get to see whether Papoose, who has been suspiciously absent from every writing credit conversation nobody has confirmed, actually stepped in on the record, or whether Claressa went at it alone. That answer is going to tell us a lot about the internal dynamics of that household right now. And it is going to tell us even more about how seriously the music side of her camp is actually taking this pivot. Track 2 is the legal side. Watch the language coming out of Baumgardner's camp in the next few weeks. Watch whether there will be consequences turns into an actual filing. And watch how Claressa's team responds if it does. Because that response is going to tell you exactly how confident her legal advisors actually are about what is provable and what is not. Both of those tracks are going to unfold on their own timeline, and both of them are going to be covered on this channel in real time. So if you're not subscribed already, this is the moment to fix that, because this is the kind of story that moves fast and rewards the viewers who are already in the room when it moves. Hit subscribe, ring the bell, do the whole thing. And before you click off, the next video I have loaded up is going to peel back another layer of this ecosystem entirely. Because there is a name that keeps showing up in 2 completely different places in this story. Once in the promotional math around the fight Claressa is supposedly cutting weight for, and once in the quiet phone calls a certain co-promoter in her camp has reportedly been making to networks that nobody in the mainstream boxing press has connected yet. And when we sit down and connect those 2 dots on this channel next, you're going to understand why Run Your Mouth was never actually about Alycia Baumgardner at all. It was about a room, a deal, and a deadline. Do not miss that one. It is already sitting on your screen right now. Click it while you are still in the mood, and I will see you in the next one.